Oh, I have to lower it down a little bit here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I feel like everybody's gone back to work today.
I put on a scarf because I figure it sort of fits this kind of thing. Yeah. I think I got the right angle. Did I have the right angle here?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Is the black baseball cap part of your signature, or is it like a team thing?
I just like it. I just like wearing it. Yeah. I mean, I end up wearing it a lot, so I like a black baseball cap. I mean, I wouldn't wear a white baseball cap probably, and I wouldn't wear like with a white insignia or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of I wear all black actually. I mean, I wear black shirts all the time. I have black shoes. I have black pants. I kind of like black.
That uniform.
Yeah, it's just easy to, it's easy. You don't have to like think about it. You just put on like, whatever's black. It's like if you look at my closet, basically it's all black stuff broken up by a couple of dark gray.
That's amazing because a lot of your work is so vibrant and it just, it catches your eye. If not the image at first, it's like all the colors that come together at once.
Yeah, I really don't dress colorfully. I never really have dressed colorfully, but I think colorfully. I mean, I can't really, I don't think in black and white. I mean, color is really easy for me to use for some strange reason. I've always been attracted to it. Like when I first went to art school and saw the color wheel, I thought, wow, there's like a million possibilities, because they're saying like, how many colors are there? There's like 3 million colors. So like, how can you go wrong? But I do use a hard edge black and white technique to a lot of times begin my work. Like if you look at a lot of those posters, they're actually done. I mean, you could take all the color out and they still work as black and white.
Yes.
So my theory is to be able to create like a black and white composition that works really, really well. And then the color sort of comes free. So then I can just go really crazy with the color without having any problem because I know the composition is not going to change at all.
When you were a child, like really, really young, I was thinking about how kids are either really verbal, they scrawl, they build things with blocks, or they smash things. When you were a kid, were you just naturally drawn to just drawing things with chalk or paint or mud?
I wouldn't say I was like a mud and paint guy. I was more like, I definitely was like a drawer. So when you had, if you ever noticed when you start out in school, like every little kid is an artist, right? I mean, when you're in kindergarten, everybody's an artist. Like all the kids are artists, right? So who's the best artist? Like, well, a little girl in the corner that can draw a horse better than somebody else. So I was, I didn't know how much talent I had, but I knew that like if I sat down to draw something, like somebody would come up and say, hey, you're a pretty good drawer. And I'd say, yeah, I can draw pretty well. And they go, well, can you draw a horse like her? And I'd like, yeah, but I don't really want to draw a horse because horses are actually pretty hard to draw. So what I would do is I'd go home and I'd look at like Mickey Mouse or something like that. And I'd draw it a couple times until I got it down. And then I'd go and dazzle my buddies by like saying, hey, I can draw Mickey Mouse. And they're going like, no way you can draw it. And I'd say, yeah, I can draw Mickey Mouse, I'll tell you, And I would just sit and draw it. And they would think I was just drawing it out of my head. Yeah. But I had like a process of visualization, which I've always had. And so I could like look at something like a tree and basically kind of hold it and then, redraw it. I didn't realize that then, but I knew that if I drew it a couple times, that I could actually sit down with a white piece of paper in class and draw Mickey Mouse for the kids. And they'd be like, hey, Jim can draw Mickey Mouse, And a little girl with a horse be like, yeah, well, my horse is better. My unicorn is much better. Right? So when you're in kindergarten, everybody draws, but then there's going to be a couple that are better than others. But as you get a little older, so by 6th grade, I was like the guy that drew, and then there was that little girl still, maybe one little girl, maybe 2 little girls, but not many people drew anymore. By junior high school or high school, you're really down to like a handful of people who, and I didn't take art seriously. I wanted to be a rock star, and I put a lot more work into my, guitar playing and that sort of thing. But I knew that I had a talent. I still, I filled sketchbooks with drawings, and I would do, like in 6th grade, I did T-shirt designs for people. Like they would give me 50 cents, and I would like buy a bunch of markers and things, and they would give me their T-shirt, and then I would take my mom's breadboard and I would like tag it to the breadboard, and I'd have them look through a hot rod magazine and find like a hot rod drawing they liked a lot, and then he would give it to me, and I'd cut it out and I'd put it at the top of the board, and then I would just draw it on their T-shirt, with my markers. So I could put together a bunch of markers, and pretty soon everybody was like, give me 50 cents. That was like a lot of money, because I could spend 25 cents on markers and make a 25-cent profit. So I kind of had a little business doing T-shirts for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't need a paper route.
I did have a paper route too, though. I was kind of an entrepreneur because I wanted to buy a lot of things, and my parents didn't want to. They would not, they didn't want to buy me a guitar. They didn't want to buy me a 10-speed bicycle. They weren't going to buy me a surfboard. They didn't want to really buy me any fun, things. Those were like, if you want those, you can buy them yourself. So I actually, earned money and bought them myself.
So the first thing you bought was a guitar, a bike, or a surfboard?
A bike. Yeah.
For your paper route?
Yeah, for my paper route. I mean, I had like one of those big Schwinn bikes, but then one of the bike shops in town, they imported an Italian 10-speed bike, and I walked in and I looked at it and I went, "What is that?" And they go, "It's like a new bike from Italy. These Europeans are all riding these bikes." And they go, "What is the thing on the back?" And I go, "That's like 10 years, And I'm like, you can put it in lower gear and like go up hills and things like that." And I had this big gigantic aircraft carrier of a bicycle, And I thought, wow, if I could like jerry rig like a thing on the back, I could carry my paper. And anyway, so I bought the bike. I bought a 10-speed bicycle. Then I bought a surfboard. Then I bought a guitar.
Do you still have that board?
No. I've owned like probably 200 boards in my life.
How about now? What's in your quiver?
I've got, I ride channel out on surfboards, and right now I ride a 6'4" thruster, with 3 fins. So it's like, and I've got a garage full. I've probably got 20 surfboards piled in the garage. So I'm the kind of guy that'll use a surfboard for a while, then I'll want one reshaped just slightly different, and then I put the other ones back, So I could break like 3 boards and still have like 15 left.
Do you have boards that you lent your design to? I think you did that. It's like, I don't think there's anything you wouldn't or have not yet been invited to or thought to put your stamp on, your artwork on.
That's true. I think I've decorated everything.
How about
surfboards were a thing for a while because everybody wanted psychedelic surfboards. So I worked for Bing, and there was this guy named Claudio Codgen who had a surfboard company called Sunshine Surfboards in Florida, and they would order surfboards. Like what I would do is I would paint a surfboard and they would put it in Surfer magazine. Then like a pile of Florida kids would order a board and they want something psychedelic like that. So I'd go up to Bing's shop and he'd just line up like 20 blanks, and I'd pull out my airbrush and I'd just paint them down like that, and glass them up and send them off to Florida. So it was like a pretty good business. I get paid like whatever I got paid for each board, and I could paint like 20 of them at a time.
Oh. You were saying airbrushing. Did you ever do any kind of street art or graffiti with the markers, kind of dabble in murals, put up pieces? What would
now I do.
Yeah.
And now I do, but in those days I didn't. No. When graffiti started, I didn't really do. I was kind of like involved in other parts of my career. Now I work with a lot of graffiti artists, and we do what would you call it, professional graffiti, where we it's like for Venom, for the movie Venom. Like I worked with a guy named Risk, and we did a piece on Melrose Avenue, and it was basically like a gigantic block party. So the film company put up the money to have a DJ, and they had they blocked off like this whole alleyway, and we painted a mural of Venom. And people got T-shirts printed and the whole thing. So it was like a gigantic party for the home video release of Venom. And the artist Todd McFarlane showed up, and everybody got their picture taken. So people could, what we do is we paint it in real time, and then like all the people would bring their friends and they stand in front of it and get their picture taken with the artist, while they're painting and all that sort of thing. So I did one for the Lego Movie. I did one for Child's Play. I did Chucky as a graffiti thing. So yeah. I do a lot of it now, but when it was like, I never really snuck out in the middle of the night and put on a mask and painted walls. I never did.
I was thinking about how I have one of the concert posters that you did in the 1990s. It's Fugazi, and it has that pan with the lid on it for the Honolulu show. And I also have a Lollapalooza, Cal State Dominguez Hills, 1994. Very colorful. I love it. And I was thinking that now, because you're able to use copyrighted licensed items, it's because, you're working directly with the movie studios. But when you were first starting out and you were making concert or gig posters for your band when you were playing guitar as a youngin', did you understand about copyrights and licensing back then already to know that in order for me to do this and not get torn down or get dinged with a cease and desist, you would just use very unique items?
Yeah, I was pretty aware. I mean, I would do things for my band, but that was like, it was like a small band in a small town, or like San Diego County. It would be like nobody would see the things beyond San Diego County. Like one time I did a Batman symbol and I put it on the back of everybody's guitar. And we started out like the concert with the stage closed, with the curtains closed, and we started playing the Batman theme. And I told it as it slowly opened, we're going to play the Batman theme. Everybody really dug it. And then we all flip our guitars over and have the Batman's logo. So I knew that Batman wasn't going to really sue me for that, but I thought it was a cool idea.
That is.
Everybody else in the band actually hated the idea, by the way.
So you're always, it sounds like you had a flair for the dramatic.
Yeah.
For theater. Early on, I know that one of the things you'd mentioned was being able to appreciate and try to figure out the Coca-Cola logo. There was something about the lines and, red and white. And what was it about the overall design that you kind of kept on going back to?
Well, I mean, now I know that I always had, probably my strongest ability was my design ability. I was probably less of a really good artist. I mean, I wasn't the kind of artist that sat in life drawing class and could, draw everything perfectly. So I never really took the time to learn that, but I fell back on my design skills. But when I was younger, I didn't realize I had all those design skills. But when I looked at the Coca-Cola sign, the rhythms of the letter forms and things like that, like I've come to really love letter forms. I've studied typography and all the great typographers and things like that. But as a kid, I just loved the rhythms of it. I didn't understand that I was appreciating the spacing and the perfection of it. And of course, that saturated red. I mean, that red behind the Coca-Cola, for some strange reason, I still not exactly sure exactly what that red was, but it still speaks to me as a really beautiful red that just it just absorbs, perfectly. So you don't need anything else except that, right? From a mile away, you still see it. It's like the Coca-Cola logo. So I appreciated the singularity of that. And I guess when you look at my work and you see that, that I think I did for Fugazi, I've tended towards singular things, things that basically you could drive by and it could be stuck on a telephone pole and somebody would see it and they'd glance at it and they'd understand immediately. They'd see that thing and they'd see Fugazi and they'd see that somebody was making this pop art statement about the band Fugazi and there was a concert, bang, 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 like that. And so I always wanted to be that, I wanted to communicate more than do art. So I was more of a communicator than an artist, but I did have art skills and I had design skills. So I put those to work in a way that I thought was I think that my career has been more of an ontological pursuit of pop culture and art and fashion and design and politics and things like that. I've mixed them all together. You've seen I've used Che and Black Panther figures on Rage Against the Machine and things like that. So I felt comfortable moving from junk culture to serious pop art to extremely weird politics to LSD graphics and mixed them and blended them all together into this what goes on in Jim's mind. And then I was able to actually have the skill to manifest it and tell a story. So if you look at all the stuff I've done over the years, it is that kind of a thing. It's oddball things happening, but rendered with such a degree of skill that you don't really question the reality of it. Basically, I'm trying to create my own physical universe. I'm trying to make the rules, and I'm trying to make the rules strong enough visually that people will accept, I could draw almost anything and put a name on it and it would work. And I think that's what bands have sort of liked, especially in the 90s with the alt bands. They really liked the idea that there could be a strong image of almost any kind. I mean, you can see what I've done with manga. I mean, I walked into it a little Tokyo bookstore, and I started pulling books off the shelf, and I was just going, oh my God, what is this stuff, And then I found out it's manga that apparently salarymen sitting on their way to work in Tokyo and read these weird comics, right? Manga comics, right? 400 pages of just bizarre stuff. Anyway, when I come through there, it was like a Bible of just craziness, right? And I'd find some little corner thing and pull it out and use it in a rock poster.
It's really incredible. I was thinking about how you also cited Mad Magazine as an early influence. Were you exposed to that at too young an age, where you didn't get maybe the innuendo or the why of the politics? Or was it right at the right time, you were like of age where that was speaking?
It was right at the right time. I was somewhat inappropriate, not inappropriate in a weird way, but inappropriate like in a mental way that, from my other little friends. So like I would pick up a Mad magazine and I sort of understood like that there was a lot of like subliminal ideas in there. I mean, I'm not sure exactly why I understood that, but I did see that there was like an underlying message, that these were not just comics. They weren't just like funny stories, that there was a message there. There was a message about drugs, there was a message about pop culture, there was a message about teenage gangs and things like that, like the promiscuousness of the consumer culture of 50s society. So I saw all that laden in the pages and I understood it and I liked it for that. I mean, for me, like, when I was like buying Mad Magazine, 8 years old, 9, 10 years old.
Wow, Jesus.
I mean, every issue was like gold. When I saw like a new issue, I'd pull it off and I would just take it home and just set it down. I mean, it was almost like I didn't even want to read it because I knew that it was like such gold in there. But I really appreciated it. There was so much funny stuff. And then of course the drawings, like the way it was drawing, it had like some of the great artists of the 50s in there, doing these things. And I thought, wow. Right? The line work and things like that. So yeah, I saved every one of them.
It must have been so exciting because it's so different from the Sunday funnies. When I remember growing up as a kid in the newspaper, and I would only want to see the Sunday comics because they were in color, and I didn't read I read Blondie and like the Peanuts and things like that, but the other ones I'm just like, no, that's too much. But yeah, Mad Magazine at any age. That, I mean, even as a grown-up, I mean, a lot of what was said between the pages, it's a lot,
Yeah. It was like a cultural critique, and it came at a time after the, because remember that the comics in the early 50s were like really violent, like radically violent, like women cooking their husbands and things like that, cannibalism, like sex and weirdness and stuff like that. Then they had the comics code that came and basically banned all those comics. So Mad Magazine was actually a lot of those comic artists who were out of work banded together to create a magazine that was like a subliminal seduction of like the young mind in ways that like they couldn't get busted for it. Mm-hmm. So it was like, highly cultural. I mean, art pieces almost by nowadays standards.
When did you move from Southern California to the Hawaiian Islands? And why, actually? I mean, surfing, I don't know, maybe was it endless summer, that brought you out here,
I mean, clearly I was a surf addict, no doubt about it. I mean, there's a breed of people. I mean, I did a lot of other things. I managed to get all my work done. I got married, I had a child, but at the same time, at the heart of it, I was like really a surf addict. So when I started working seriously, I was trying to like break my addiction to surfing, like the need to just like, I mean, you just always have to surf. It's like injecting it into your veins or something.
Yeah.
So I was doing pretty well. I did that Tales from the Tube comic book that was in Surfer Magazine. I think it was 1969, 70, something like that. I worked with Rick Griffin and Robert Crumb and all the different underground artists. And so at that time I thought things are going pretty good for me. And I was like really hating the politics of America at the time. I thought that the election of Richard Nixon was like, basically the end of everything. I couldn't, because I'd known him since a child. I mean, he was like the vice president through all of Eisenhower's years, and then he ran for governor of California. And I just, I kind of loathed the man and the fact that he was president. Like, I thought, America's just done. It's over, So I thought I'm going to go to Australia and raise my family there. And at that time, I had like one child. And so I just threw all my stuff together and just on a whim, decided to go. But I wanted to stop in Hawaii first because I was still a surf addict. I couldn't.
I don't think you brought that.
Because you can imagine like all the times I sat in those surf movies, like in Oceanside, looking at those waves, just thinking like the North Shore. The North Shore is like godlike. The North Shore is like, can you ride the North? Do you think you could handle it, Jim? It's like, yeah, sure I could, right? Anyway, so I wanted to stop at the North Shore and live there for a while. I figured like 6 months in Hawaii, but of course I got seduced by Hawaii. I really fell in love with the place. I mean, yeah, I loved the North Shore. I loved the surfing culture. I loved, and what was going on in Honolulu at the time. I mean, it was like a gigantic party. I mean, at that time, Hawaii was like one gigantic party. I don't know what it's like now, but at that time, you had like a lot of trust fund kids. I mean, I'm not sure whether their parents just like sent them to Hawaii to get rid of them or what, you know, but I mean, they had like the houses like right by the big houses down by, you know, like Diamond Head, that neighborhood in there, really expensive neighborhood.
Point.
Huh?
Black Point.
Yeah,
Wait,
I mean,
Black Point? That sounds right.
so they were the ones who were putting on concerts and things like that. They were the ones that were putting their money into like the Crater celebration and things like that. And they were working in conjunction with the radio station. So it was like Honolulu at that time was one gigantic rock and roll party. And then when bands would come through, it was insanity because bands were basically on vacation. Like when you go into LA, I mean, you could be like a big shot in LA, but there's like everybody's a big shot in LA, right? Even if you got VIP passes, you're still going to be standing in line behind a movie star or something like that. In Hawaii, it's not like that at all. So, I mean, if you're like friends with the guy at the radio station and you get into the Rolling Stones show and you got like a pass, you're pretty much like having dinner with the Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're like on the, yeah, it's the Willy Wonka ticket. And the same, James Taylor came, Elton John. That was when Elvis was there, you know, when he did the Elvis concert. I think he was like just before I left. And I mean, just on and on and on. It was like all the big bands came through there. And when they were there, they wanted to be on vacation. So they were like sitting in hotels, you know, and you'd be hanging out with them at the swimming pool, and you get to go to the sound checks. So I would think Honolulu at that time, I mean, if anything, the only reason I probably left Hawaii was the fact that I didn't think that I would ever recover from Hawaii. Like I felt like my career had gone really well and like taken a gigantic jump in Hawaii. And it was mostly because of the advertising agencies and all the, I mean, there was like so much commerce going on there. Like the advertising agencies, there was like, they were building all the big housing projects at that time. I mean, Hawaiian Airlines was doing crazy business. Crazy Shirts was happening. I was doing a lot of stuff for Crazy Shirts at the time. So there was a lot going on, but I felt like that there was, you know, when I left Hawaii, it was more because things had gone so well for me and I was having such a good time. I thought, I'm just gonna like, I would disappear here. Eventually I would like basically just go into hedonist paradise and, you know, and like become like the big artist here and then everybody'd forget about me. Where I saw my friends on the mainland were like doing album covers for cool bands and I thought, I really got to get back to that. So basically I packed up the family. Then I had a second kid in Hawaii. So now I had two kids, right? And we all went back and I started doing more album covers and got an artist rep and all that sort of thing. And basically went through a bunch of years of great success. But Hawaii was a great time. You know.
Do you remember what it was like, because you were thinking about the North Shore so much, what was it like when you finally got into the water with your board?
That was, I mean, I can actually remember the first time paddling out, like in really big sunset.
Which beach was it, or which shore break?
Sunset Beach.
Okay.
You know, Sunset, you know, it was like, because I lived at Cavella Bay, or Turtle Bay, you know, where the Kuilima, I guess the Hilton is there right now.
It used to be Kuilima.
Huh? Yeah. Well, they didn't even have the hotel there. It was just basically just all houses there. So it was like living in paradise, like on the beach. I had a house right on the beach there. And so I would surf at Velzy Land and places like that. But the first place I paddled out, I really wanted to go to Sunset Beach because I'd already seen Sunset Beach and I'd always thought about it. And it's like, I mean, it was like really big. And I thought, no, I can handle it. So as I'm paddling out, I'm thinking like, wow, this is like bigger. Looks bigger as I'm paddling out than it does in the movies. And I thought, and you just keep, as you paddle out, you're just looking up and you're just going, holy shit, wow. These are like really, really big. I mean, this is like the whole ocean is like lifting up and like, you know, plus at that time you had a lot of really like all the world-class surfers there, right? So I'm like paddling out and seeing the guys from the movies, right? Like, you know, Brewer and all these people like all the best Hawaiian surfers. And they're just like coming down in waves. So it's like being live in a movie. And I mean, I thought to myself, it felt like a gladiator's arena, you know, because like the way that it kind of wraps in there, like the way sunset wraps and you got that whole west side and things like that. And you can paddle out through the channel, which is kind of easy, but that's like the only easy thing about it, right? Because you can paddle out through the channel, you can look at it as you get out there, you know, and you see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going like, okay, I'm out. Let's go. And then you kind of move into the lineup. But like still, you're surrounded by like some of the best surfers in the world. And at one of the, you know, premier beaches on earth on a big day. And it's like, I'd say Hawaii, it's like Hawaii at that level, there's really nothing else like it because your body, you're kind of scared, because, I mean, you'd be an idiot not to be, right? Because there's so much going on, and the shifting of the peaks and things like that, and the wind. I mean, the wind is harder than you'd ever possibly imagine. You always see the plumes coming off the waves, but you didn't realize that, like, you have to duck because it's like the water, like it's like a waterfall hitting you, right? I mean, if you miss a wave or something like that, you kind of like duck, and it's like all that water comes over on you, and the dynamics of it. I mean, if you go over the falls or something like that, you're like paying a pretty serious price, right? And you're watching the craziest wipeouts you've ever seen. You're like, you're paddling out and you see some guy, and you go, oh God, I'm glad that wasn't me,
How about now? I imagine when people come to the islands, or to our islands, and when they go surfing, one of the bonuses is you don't have to wear a wetsuit because the temperature is pleasant versus everything off the West Coast, or pretty much anywhere else is really cold. So where do you surf now in California?
Malibu. Yeah, this is Malibu. This is Malibu right behind me.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're like in the hills of Malibu. We're like right up Las Flores Canyon. So I actually just went surfing in really big waves at Malibu this morning.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, there's a big south swell running this morning. And the beaches are open for surfing, but not for anybody on the beach. So they've got cops down there, and the lifeguards and things like that. But you can walk in. Basically, this morning I just had my wife drop me off, so I didn't feel like walking from a mile away because I had to park. So I had her drop me off. I just sort of set a timer and then went out and surf, came back. So it was like my surfing concierge.
Best.
But yeah, we've been going to Kauai every year, and we stay at Honolulu Bay, and I surf there. I really love that spot. I mean, to me, like Honolulu Bay, like when you're sitting out there, it's paradise. I mean, if you died and went to heaven, and there was a heaven for surfers, it couldn't look a lot better than that. I mean, Honolulu Bay is like, you got this 360-degree wrap, and those mountains are like look like you're in Tahiti or something like that. The way the light falls between the ranges and things like that, and it's just like, it's so beautiful. I mean, I'll sit out there sometimes and just think like, this is like really cool. And then the water's warm on top of it.
Yeah. Well, it's because is it because the islands are closer than Tahiti or the other places that have really amazing surf? Is that what makes up for it, or is Hawaii just kind of like an ideal destination when it comes to all things paradise?
I think, well, I don't know. The side of the island has got the airport on it. It's not that paradisey to me, right?
Yeah.
The North Shore seems paradisey. It looks like. Some of the things haven't changed since World War II. I mean, you can almost like imagine that it looks like it did in 1940, right? That old church there, and that big field around the church, and the buildings and things like that. They look like they did then, don't they? A lot of it hasn't changed much.
Yeah. Well, it's at least on Oahu we have like the outdoor circle that helps prevent oversized signage and billboards and things like that. I love. All I know really is Hawaii. I've vacationed elsewhere, but I'm born and raised here on Oahu. I don't want to really have to adjust to anything else. So I love it here. When you kind of look at the rearview mirror of your life, there's certain things that kind of stand out as that were kind of breakouts maybe in your art career. Mm-hmm. Because at different points, like when you were making money in the 1970s in Hawaii, it's just like at that point, it's like, wow, have I peaked? And then when you started being reintroduced to another set of clients in the 1990s with the rock posters, like, have I peaked? Can you cite different maybe projects or pieces that were like, that really kind of was like a breakout tsunami wave for you that reintroduced you, I guess?
Yeah, I guess it would be like a rock star having hit records or something like that. Like certain things. I would guess that doing the Tales from the Tube, in Surfer Magazine, was like kind of a big thing for me. That was like suddenly I was in Surfer Magazine, like with a bunch of really good artists. All the rest of those guys were like pretty famous. I wasn't famous at all. I was like, I was popular for the stuff that I did, and I could get like local jobs and things like that. But like, I wasn't really going to get anything big. Meeting Rick Griffin was a giant thing for me, just because he was like super famous and I was like nobody. And he sort of recognized, like that I could go somewhere. But I mean, initially we made friends as surfers, because he had like come back from San Francisco and he wanted to kind of, I guess, in some way reconnect with the surfing roots, and like get back to like, I mean, he wanted to be like a regular guy, it's sort of like, it was his regular guy phase, even though he wasn't a regular guy at all. But when we met, he said, hey, do you surf? Yeah, I surf. It's like, well, let's go surfing, right? And I thought, oh shit, well, this guy's like, because I really wanted to learn a lot from him. But at the same time, I wanted to go surfing with him. So initially we went surfing a lot together. And then he started telling me that like he has a lot of work and that he can't do all his work. And, he thinks that, he said, if you tried a little bit harder, you could actually probably do album covers and things like that. I thought I probably could. So I got a gig with him, like to do Alice Coltrane album cover. That was a gigantic thing, right? And then I met another guy at the very same time named Ron Cobb, who was also a world famous artist at the time. He was doing cartoons in the LA Free Press. And I was like sitting in a restaurant in Westwood, and I was like drawing cartoons while I was eating my lunch, because I had a job there as a layout artist upstairs, which was just, just making some money while I was going to art school. And he came by and he goes, hey, can you do any more of those kind of things? And I said, well, I thought he was the guy, and I said, yeah, I mean, I can draw this kind of stuff all the time. It's like, it's what I do, right? And he said, well, I got like this syndication, and I want to syndicate underground comics. And he said, your stuff is like pretty weird. He said, could you turn that into a comic strip? And I said, yeah, I mean, I could use this character and this character. Yeah, I could do that easy. And so he said, okay, so they signed me up. So my stuff started appearing in underground newspapers around the country. So I had like sort of two things going, working on real legitimate jobs with Rick, like album covers and, 7-inch sleeves, and then doing this underground stuff. So people were seeing my stuff all over the country because it was in this, I would do a cartoon and basically was syndicated to all these underground papers. So I did start to develop, like a name for myself. So I could go in someplace and say like, hey, I'm Jim, and I do this stuff, and I could show them some things, and they'd hire me. But when I left for Hawaii, I really hadn't developed much. I was kind of like just at the beginning of all that. Mm-hmm. And then Hawaii probably, I ended up having to work there a lot more than I should have. That's the biggest problem with Hawaii.
Should have?
Yeah, I would have liked to enjoy myself more, but my ambition, because there were so many opportunities, I took advantage of the opportunities, and I just kept going forward with them, So I ended up working harder and surfing less than I would have liked to. What
did you learn while doing commercial work? Because you said you did campaigns for Hawaiian Airlines, Crazy Shirts. There's the Diamond Head Crater Festival that was a huge thing in the 1970s here on Oahu, or actually around the world, because it drew such names. And I think we had one research, I think it was 2012 when there was a relaunch, but it was, and then that was it. But what did you learn, I guess, when you were doing that?
I guess I learned, I had learned to be disciplined, so I had to, I took on jobs, and I tried to make every job count. So it was a matter of like, I had like a number of styles that I worked with. Like I told you, I worked with Don Ho and the Alihis too. I did an album cover for them. So I tried to be really flexible. Like I would do, like I did a brochure for the Rolling Stones for their Hawaiian tour, right? And I did it, very, I don't know, what you call it, neon-y, pop art kind of thing. So I tried to make it look pro, like very much like they would get on the mainland type of thing, rather than like some hippy-dippy, like, island artist. So I didn't really try to be the hippy-dippy island artist. I tried to be more like a global voice of the new culture. Like I tried to bring the new culture to Hawaii, like rather than like tie myself to like basically Hawaiian girls and like flowers behind the ears and like birds and things like that. So when I did something, I tried to do something really different all the time. And I guess I learned, working for Hawaiian Airlines and working for the advertising agencies was a gigantic thing. Or working with Don Ho and the Lead was a gigantic thing, because I had to get assistants to help me, because they had to get the work out. They had to make sure that Don Ho got his stuff and things like that. So I started like a little company. I became like sort of the center of a little company. And then I found out that I could actually buy radio time for Don Ho and make a bunch of money on it, because I was like handling the account. I said, I'm handling the account. And they go, yeah, you're handling the account. And I thought, okay, so I got this woman who was like, did that kind of, someone like you that worked at a radio station, right? And I said, well, how would we do this? She goes, oh, we just buy the radio time and it costs this much money, and then you get that much money and then you split it with me. And I'm like, sounds good to me. Okay.
You
That was
had me
like,
at money.
that was like making money for doing nothing. But I hadn't really done that before because I always sort of work my ass off to make anything. So then I thought, whoa, okay, this is different. I could, this is like a business then. So I would say I became, like I went to Hawaii to become like just like, the man in paradise and like take my family to Australia and like live in a little hut somewhere and just like, blend into the earth. And I came back like a hardcore businessman, like really driven, goal oriented,
Wow.
like knew how to organize things and stuff like that. So Hawaii, right, really like didn't work the way I expected to at all.
I was just like, you're not working out very well for like Aloha from Hawaii. You're going to become very studious.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, eventually, towards the very end, I actually had to move into Honolulu because I had so much work that I couldn't
Oh
be
my gosh.
driving back and forth all the time, And then I was surfing on, I'd surfed the South Shore, but it's not the same as the North Shore. But at the same time, there was like so much work that I couldn't even do it all. So
Wow.
it became like this, it became wildly successful. But I had a lot of friends, and like I said, a lot of people were promoters, or music promoters, radio station people, kids with like 10 million bucks. Who knows what they were doing with that, right? And they always wanted something. Can you paint my car? Can you paint my wall? And it's like, okay. And so it was, Hawaii became a lot of work.
That's funny. So
But
when you went back to California, did you land back in Southern California or did you go back to LA because that's where all the print work was at?
I started in Southern California, which is near Encinitas, which actually leads to the next step, which worked out pretty well for me because that was about the time of the Dogtown and the Z-Boys thing going on. Anyway, it was before the Dogtown and the Z-Boys actual event, which I actually did the poster for. But it was like when I moved to Encinitas, I hooked up with Bain Surfboards. I did some stuff for them, and I started doing advertising for them. And they came up with Cadillac Wheels. And Skateboard magazine was just starting out at the time. And Frank Nasworthy, who invented Cadillac Wheels, like came to my studio one day and he just dumped a bunch of wheels out. And he said, Bob Bain will like pay you to do 4 posters for us, and they're going to be on the back cover of Skateboard magazine. He said you can do anything you want. He said just make my wheels look really good. And I thought, oh shit, this is really good. Wow, this is a big opportunity. And I was kind of ready because I was a pretty good artist at that point. I felt like I was in control of my techniques. So I decided to do a poster in each technique, like one really complete poster. And I started out by doing like one of like this guy, like in the, because we used to, like in those days, we were trying to like transition out of regular skateboarding, like standing on your head and stuff like that and going out to the pools and things like that. Because they didn't have skate parks yet, but we found like empty pools like out in the hills and we'd skate out there. And I thought it'd really be cool to have like this guy, and I found this kid at the beach who was like skateboarding around while I was getting ready to surf. And he had this like hairdo, and I saw the sun like hit him from the back through his hairdo, and I thought, wow, that looks like it looks like his head's on fire or something like that. I said, hey dude, you want to like be in an ad for for Skateboard magazine? And he goes, sure, I said, I'll pay you. And I said, you come to my studio. So I got him in the studio, and I set him down, and I shot the pictures, right? Then I went out to the pool, and I shot pictures out there, and I graffitied all over the pool. Then I put the whole thing together and created the Accept No Substitutes that went on the back of the magazine, which has actually become a pretty famous piece. And then because of that, I did all 4 posters and became sort of this famous skateboard artist, which I wasn't really a skateboard artist at all, because one of them had a pirate in it, one had a race car, one had the kid, and one had a cowboy. So I did this whole cowboy nostalgia thing, which led to me getting a pile of record covers for the Allman Brothers and other cowboy band, Western Southern bands and things like that. And so that really led to a lot of things, because a lot of people saw that stuff. One of the things that led to me getting a lot of album cover work also was the fact that Dean Torrance stole an idea that I did in Hawaii. I remember I told you about the having to pull the gate off because there was a shipping strike, so I had to create a poster out of a gate. So I created a poster out of a gate, and apparently he saw the poster, and then he copied it for something he was doing. So when I came back, he contacted me, and he got me all these album covers for the Beach Boys, because he was doing a lot of stuff for the Beach Boys. So some of the stuff I did for him through the Beach Boys. So the period of doing these album covers combined with the skateboard stuff and a few selected movie posters pretty much was like the rocket that took me into the, because then everybody saw my stuff everywhere, no matter where I went. If I could show any one of these things and they'd be like, oh yeah, I saw that, can we get one like that? But then of course everybody wanted one of the best thing that I ever did, which made it difficult because then you start getting a lot more work and you get really busy. And like, you know, a lot of those things were done at the very beginning. And then once your rocket takes off, then you're getting like, you're surrounded by work and people and things and meetings and stuff like that. So to sit down and actually concentrate on something is very difficult, right? And yet you've got all this work and these things going on. And it's like, so I would say the decade after that, after I got back from Hawaii, my success ratio increased exponentially. But at the same time, I started getting really tired because it was just one thing after another. I mean, sometimes 6 things at a time. I mean, I would set paintings and like paint, you know, 3 or 4 paintings at a time.
Was that helpful that there were so many different campaigns going on and it was like, you had no, there were like no boundaries. It's like you had full reign of where to go and where to take it. Did you have like full creative control, I guess, for the majority of the projects?
So for the most part, yeah. In those days, they wanted, I mean, probably not as much as with the rock posters you're looking at from the 90s. I mean, in those days, they had to be, I mean, the Allman Brothers like wanted a gas station, right? They wanted a gas station. They wanted it to look like it was a branded Allman Brothers, and they wanted some like ancient, old-time gas station. It looked like it was from the South. So I actually had to find a gas station and photograph it and like put their logos all over the place and have a truck pull up that had like Allman Brothers junk all in it and things like that. So that was, I would say a lot of times I had to like do things that they wanted to do, you know, like the rock star would want something, you know, Robbie Krieger wanted himself like standing in the desert like a brujo, you know, like above the desert, you know, so there'd be like a shadow underneath him. He's standing with his guitar and he wanted like basically Carlos Castaneda background, you know, so it looked very hallucinogenic and that, you know, that he was like a god, you know, not a god, but like a deity, right?
Yes. Oh yeah,
So
I mean, you know, same.
Yeah, so I had to interpret that. And then for the back cover, he wanted a picture of the same desert, except for the fact that he wanted a cloud layer, and he wanted his body in the cloud as if he had like become one with the land and was living in the clouds. So that had to be, you know, so you have to do that effectively. You can, you know, it's like, if it was just a big empty desert with a bunch of clouds, is anybody going to notice he's up there? So you have to kind of design it like, and that's where the design skill comes in.
What were the practical, oh gosh, because was this before computers? Was everything like cut and paste and you had to just kind of size it down physically? Like, yeah, like photocopy it, cut it. What was the process like during that era of your art making? And I mean, it's incredible that you were like taking pictures. Were you responsible for every aspect of putting it together, or did you have a team that assisted you with this?
I usually had workers with me, like doing like finish work and things like that. So yeah, there was so much work that I actually sometimes I had 2 or 3 people working with me, and they would do finish work or they would do lettering or something like that, or they would, you know. But I had to take the pictures. I had to develop the picture. Then I would have to blow the picture up. So I had to, you know, I'd have a giant machine and I'd put the picture in and I'd blow it up to big size. I'd have to redraw it, right? Then I'd have to transfer my drawing, you know, because a lot of times my pieces were like a number of different things, you know, together, right? I mean, the Allman Brothers thing was like 8 or 10 different pieces, you know. There was like part of a gas station, there was a car, there was guitars. And so I had to take pictures of all that stuff, you know, so I had something to visualize and something to look at. Then I would have to blow the whole thing up and the painting would be 24 by 24 for a 12-inch album cover because I wanted to reach down and look really sharp. So I would paint it like double size. So that meant I had to bring all these elements up to giant size. Then I had to redraw them. Okay, then you redraw it on a piece of tracing paper. Then you put the tracing paper down on a piece of illustration board. Then you have to transfer the entire drawing onto there. Then you begin to paint. And you have to paint from the back to the front because you don't really have like the time to, I mean, it's not like I'm sitting there like with an easel, like, you know, out somewhere. Usually I've got like a week and a half, 2-week deadline, right? Mm-hmm. So all this stuff, all the preliminary work has to be done in the first 4 days. And then there's actually like a week of painting. And if you make one mistake in the painting, you can imagine like, what do you do, right? So I would say that I got incredibly disciplined because I couldn't really make a mistake because I had to paint with light fast dyes that actually dyed the board because I had to paint so quickly and I wanted the colors to be so vibrant. I mean, it wasn't like I could sit there with a brush and like, you know, paint out a sky. I mean, if I wanted to do a sky, I had to like paint the entire thing, you know, with an airbrush. Then I paint the mountain range in the foreground. Then I start painting the guy. So you have to think, I mean, the tricky thing probably is to figure out like what the the consistency of each thing is going to be, because at the end it's got to like become a three-dimensional thing where the guy is standing with his guitar in front. It looks like a photograph in some ways, right? And then the background like seeds off and the sky is off somewhere. So I you know, you have to kind of like think the whole time about like where that's going to be when you're painting backwards, forwards, right? So how light is the back going to be, and how dark is the front going to be, right? So when I finally put on my black has got to be very, very black. My black in the background has got to be very, very not black. Anyway.
No, that's incredible.
It was a pain in the ass, for sure.
It's incredible because now it's like I can afford to get a decent camcorder that can record in 4K and, you know, just be able to resize. One of the things I remember when I went to high school, I wanted to be an architect. So one of the classes that was required was drafting. And I dipped out of that class from the first period because I didn't have the patience to make the letters within the line and to have that kind of consistency. And there was math and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'll just take regular art classes. I'll be very happy with that. You were able to develop a font or typography. You took typography classes. Are you familiar with it? One of the Beastie Boys' Ill Communication, the lettering, the hand-drawn lettering that was used throughout that campaign. How did you divine that?
That was like pretty easy. I mean, I never actually took a lettering class. I mean, as a kid, I had these little books called speedball books, which were like speedball lettering books, and they had all these lettering styles in it. So even as a kid, I would like draw like really cool letters and things like that and put them on my doors. So I just did that. But when we were working on an album cover, Mike D, you know, he just, for whatever reason, and I'm still not completely sure, since that thing started out as a whole different way, he said, you know, you do all this like really cool lettering. He said, can you do that like that hand lettering that you do on like drafting class? You know, like when you were in high school. And I said, are you kidding me?
Shut up!
I said, are you kidding me? So I drew out some lines like that. I basically did like an entire alphabet for him, and I said, is that what you're talking about? And he goes, exactly.
Our third eyes are wide open right now. That is just crazy.
Well, you like that lettering style, huh?
It's yeah, but I remember like, but that was something that's just so precise. It's like, but comic books too. It's like there's a storyline and there's someone who draws and then does the coloring in. But if you don't get that lettering right, it throws off everything. It's like good audio, you know? Right. It can look great, but if you don't have that story communicated just right in just the right place, the comic just doesn't translate as well, you know. But every little bit, everything counts. Like I'm looking at my Lollapalooza 1994 and the different lettering and just the way it's the composition of it. It works. It's like automatic. I'm getting this feeling all at once. And then I can break it down later, but it's just like all at once, I'm excited. I want to be at that show. I was at that show, you know? The Fugazi with the pot and the lid. I don't know what it is about that, maybe because I went to those shows too, but I love it more than the LA one with the chair. It's like, that's nice, but I'm glad Honolulu got the pot and the lid, you know? Just for whatever reason, you know? It just works.
Yeah, he asked for a chair. I mean, when he called up and we were working on the album, I'm working on the poster, and I said, so do you want something special? Because I knew how he was, right? And he's like, you know, I don't want any of your crap. I don't want any of your like space creatures or like, you know, violent things or, you know, any of your cartoon characters. I'm like, okay, so what do you want? He goes, a chair. I'm like, a chair? And he goes, a chair. So I found a Bauhaus chair. I mean, that's like a really beautiful chair, right? I mean, it's like a classic. But he didn't know that. I said, here you go, it's a chair, right? But everybody likes that. And then next time I did one for him, I said, so what do you want, like a frying pan or something like that, or a pot? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, I think I get it.
Wait, Ian Mackay of Fugazi was just like, this is what he wants?
Correct.
Oh my goodness.
I did not make up the pot, and I did not make up the chair. I would have never thought of a pot or a chair, ever, in a million years. I would have not like done that for a band and like sent it over and go like, what do you think? I mean, when I worked with Billy Corrigan, it's like they had me call him up in Chicago, and I call his house. And I say, hey, Billy, we're working on this thing. And he goes, yeah. I said, so what do you want? He goes, an ice cream cone. I said, ice cream cone? An ice cream cone. So there you go. I would have never put an ice cream cone on it, you know?
Okay, well, I guess it would just be, you've had some time since then. If you were to go back to 1993 for a Fugazi poster for LA and for Honolulu, what were you first thinking? Were you thinking, something like Kikaida maybe, or Ultraman, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I did for Metallica, I did like that robot from The Day the Earth Stood Still. Like I thought that was like classic, you know, because I have Gort like basically frying the soldier and his you know, because I always liked that idea that like you know, when they all point their guns at Gort, he gets out of the spaceship like that, then his little thing opens up like that, and he just like that, basically just fries all their guns, melts their guns. Like, what are you gonna do now? Hit me? So I for Metallica, I just did, you know, the really cool Metallica lettering, and I did Gort because I always wanted to do Gort. So a lot of times I do, you know, like I did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like I've always loved Tadanobu Yoko-oh, the Japanese artist. I mean, he did, I think he did the Japanese Olympics and or the Tokyo Olympics in the 60s, and I thought, I mean, the series of his posters in the beginning, I thought he was like the best pop artist in the world. I mean, I didn't know who he was or where, I knew he was from Tokyo, and but he had a distinctly Japanese flavor. It was almost like traditional Japanese junk wrapped into this beautiful pop culture poster. I mean, he's a great poster artist. So that stuff always stuck in my mind. So when I did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it had to be like kind of a Japanese theme because of the, you know, the nunchucks and all that sort of thing, and their kung fu, but not kung fu being Chinese, but
Asia,
yeah. But they wanted something a little bit more Japanese on this one, so I used that technique, the Tadanobu Yoko, you know, idea.
When did you switch from? I asked about it. I have a tendency, if I ask you once, I don't want to ask again. But you were using practical photographs and cut and paste, painting. Twice the size, 3 times the size. When did you move to computer, everything, tablets? Like, do you ever use painting? Do you ever bust out your pencils and pen and ink?
Yeah, probably now I do a lot. But I mean, I wouldn't do a poster that way. Just because a poster, I have to, you know, it's got to be done so that it can be flexible. I mean, any commercial job I would do, I would use a computer just because I have to be a lot more flexible. I mean, the client might want to change their mind, or they might a different lettering style or different color. With a computer, you can change like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for graffiti pieces that I do and like, you know, live art that's going to be hung in a gallery, that's like all hand done. So I would say I switch between the two. I prefer using my hand. I mean, all that stuff you see from the 90s was all hand done, and then it was silk screened. So like all the ink work on that, like I did all that ink work by hand. I'd spend like, you know, like a day usually inking all those things.
Do you do it freehand, or like what was the process like? Did you have like a sheet paper and like a blue, like drafting paper and the blue pencil and sketch it out? Did you have like a series of 7, and you're like, okay, I like 3, and this is what I'm gonna roll with?
Usually I'll draw what I want to draw, what I want to ink in. So I'll tend to use, like, you know, set down a big piece of illustration board and put a piece of tracing paper down and start drawing really loosely, right? And then I'll get like some little corner that I like, and I'll sort of save that. Then I'll flop in another piece of tracing paper. So a lot of times I'll have like 6 or 7 pieces of tracing paper, all that have one component of what I want to draw. Then what I'll do is I'll flatten it all out, put another piece of tracing paper on, draw my final drawing, then take everything off, and then put a piece of Duraline or some kind of a plastic surface over it, and then ink on that. And then I've got like a pretty solid, I know exactly what I want to do, because inking, I have a certain inking technique where I'll use, you know, I go from a fat line to a very sharp line, and take another fat line to a very sharp line. So I know the dynamic of what I want to do. So then it's just finish work. And I always found that finish work is not very creative. It's like my mind is gone somewhere else because I sort of know it's a mechanical process where the initial idea is fun, but uncomfortable because you never really know where you're going. The finished work, basically, you know where you're going, and it's like creating a piece of architecture. There are blocks, you basically put the blocks together till your little house is done.
The last time we spoke, you said that you were discussing Bill and Ted's new movie. You were doing the film poster for that.
Yeah. I haven't started on the poster yet. We have started on a game, though. It's going to be an interesting game.
You're going to be doing a game, too? Wow!
Yeah.
Look how fun you're having. You're having so much fun.
I know, it is fun. Yeah. Now, the Bill and Ted stuff is going to be good. It's going to be a fun movie, too. Yeah.
We have 60 seconds, so I don't want to have a cold ending with you as far as our IG Live. So, Jim Evans, I'm so grateful that you were able to share an hour with us here. And I know I'll be looking to your IG feed for new projects. And what is your official website for anybody who might want a chance to see your gallery and order things online?
I guess right now, TAZ Posters, TAZPosters.com. It's got most of the stuff on there. Although I do a lot of collaborations with Risk, Risk Rock. I don't know if you follow him or not, but a lot of the collaborations are up in his store right now. So he's got a Shopify store. You can find things up there. I'll be putting a lot more stuff up. I end up getting busy. I never really have time to like set up stores and things like that. I really should do a lot more of that.
You can afford to hire somebody for that. You should just keep creating.
Yeah, I should.